Chapter 5. My body remembered all the trauma I had not yet known about as I opened one eye and then another. My throat was raw with thirst. My arms sat heavier than the day after a 6-hour gym session. I rasped out a hello, then a, "Is there anybody there?" The shadow of a nurse with good assets brushed across the frosted glass window of my private room. I coughed out an SOS and she entered. "You're awake. That's good," she said as she made a beeline for my IV. "You had us all a little worried there, Mr. Gilchrist." I always hated that surname. My mom split from the old man when I was no more than 3. Before I was 5, she was remarried, and I was rebranded Jack Gilchrist. The second I got into wrestling, I dropped that title like a bad date. "My legs. I can't. The doctor will be around with you shortly. He'll explain everything. Try to rest up and not worry," she said. "Water." She rounded the bed, reached under, and popped the latch that allowed her to raise me up to a semi-seated position. Her name badge read Mullen. It sat on her breast no more than 2 inches from my face. She smelled good. I focused my attention on her as she poured me a drink of water. She took my head in her hand before placing the cool of the glass to my lips and tilted. She smiled at me as I thanked her before she checked my pulse on her fob watch. She was young, curvy, happy cheeks, but her eyes sat aged in her face. However many night shifts she'd worked were sitting heavy on her. "Am I going to be able to wrestle again?" I asked. "I'm sorry?" "Wrestle. Am I going to be able to wrestle again? I think I broke my neck and—" "The doctor will be around shortly. He'll—" "Please, Nurse Mullen." "Marcela," she offered. "Please, Marcela. I'm lying here. I'm afraid to even try to move my legs in case I can't do it. If I can't wrestle, I don't know what I'm going to do." Marcela got to her feet, pulled back my sheets, and took a pencil from the breast pocket by her watch. She licked the tip of it before running it along the sole of my left foot, from heel to toe. "Do you feel that?" asked Marcela. I felt nothing. I reacted with nothing. She ran the pencil down the other side of my foot and up my shin to my knee, where she stopped, set the pencil on the bed, and rubbed my heavily scarred knee with her soft hands. "That, I feel." I fought back the tears as relief slammed into my chest, knocking the breath from my body. "What happened to your knee?" she asked. "Blew it out wrestling in Canada. They got free health care up there, you know?" She laughed, pulling up the sheets and tucking me back into bed. "That's what I hear. You any good?" "At wrestling? You bet. I was world champion. I lost it last night." "Mr. Gilchrist?" "Just call me Jack." "Okay, well, Jack, you've been with us a while. It's nothing to freak out about, and the doctor will explain everything. I just didn't want to not tell you." "How long is a while?" "It was a week yesterday," Marcela reluctantly offered as she backed out of the room. "Dr. Maida will be with you shortly. In the meantime, try to get some rest." Maida arrived at my door with my manila folder in one hand and a black coffee in another. As he sat down next to me, I heard the familiar crunch of fucked-up cartilage in one of his knees. He took great delight in the detail of my 2 spinal discs, which exploded the moment I landed the full moon on Marvelous Marty, and how I complicated what should have been an otherwise difficult surgery. "The blood thinners you'd taken the day before meant that you began to bleed out the moment we opened you up. This led you to have a series of transient ischemic attacks, which is just another way of saying you had several small strokes." Maida mopped his brow as he relived the ordeal. "In the end, my heart stopped twice, and he did the best job possible with my neck. I'd have limited rotation in it, and may require future trips under the blade, but all things considered. With physiotherapy, You should make a full recovery," bragged Maida. When Maida left, I had one of the male nurses plug me in a phone in my room. It would be billed at rates left to televangelists and loan sharks, but after a week in St. Mark's, I was needing to spend a little, to save a lot. I knew what I had tucked away. It wasn't much of a nest egg. No wrestler had anything like decent medical. This stay would need a nest omelet for me to get back in the black. She picked up on the third ring. "Neen, it's Jack and—" "Oh my God. Fuck, you're awake. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I had been there right up to Wednesday morning, but Frank insisted I got back here. I'm valeting Marty this Friday. I'm going heel, and they're building a faction around Wyatt." Frank had let Marty keep the strap for a little over a week. That was awful big of him. "Neen, I need a favor. I need someone to come pick me up. I can do maybe another 3 days here before I'm panhandling." "Shit, Jack. I'm in the middle of some promo work, but I know someone who will be more than happy to spring you," said Nina. I heard him long before I saw him. 6'8", 335 pounds of A for alpha masculinity, as the ring announcer used to proclaim proudly. Jimmy the Cajun Creole had wrestled 9 bouts a week, every week, and not once could I ever remember him catching a spot on the injury list. He popped his large frame around the door of my hospital room. A half-foot of pearly white teeth beamed my way between his mustache and braided goatee. He'd lost definition since the last time I'd seen him. The outline from his chest to waist had squared out a little, but even to me, a former world champion, he was an impressive hulk of a man. "Anyone here order a mustache ride?" barked Jimmy. "You're brave. I've been shitting in a pan since I got here." I jabbed back, "Grab me my things from over there." He tossed me a white tee, a pair of washed-out black jeans, and a hooded sweater with my favorite gym's logo on it. When I'd managed to get myself decent, he moved me into the waiting wheelchair and slipped my trainers onto my limp feet. As we wheeled past reception, I dropped a hand onto one of the wheels, jerking my chariot to a stop. "Give me a minute, Jimmy," I said, as I looked around and spotted Marcela. She smiled as she moved towards me. "So, you're skipping out on us early, huh?" "No such thing as a per diem when you're on the bench. Will you be back with us for physio?" She threw several glances my way as she prepared my waiver and exit paperwork. "That in this building or other side of the hospital," she said. "So no real likelihood that I'd bump into you then?" I replied, drawing out some red in her cheeks. "You really need to take your rehab seriously." Marcela chided. "I will. I was just wondering what my odds of seeing you again are." She handed me 2 documents to sign. I did, and pushed them back her way, then said, "I don't know if this makes any difference or whatever, but the blonde that sat by my bedside when they first brought me in, we're not anything. I mean, she's a friend." "Okay. I didn't want you to think I was one of those guys." "One of what guys?" "One of those guys who would ask a gorgeous nurse out on a date when he was already spoken for." "So what do you say? You ever get time enough away from here you'd entertain being taken out by a guy like me?" She smiled. It had me feeling things south of the belt for the first time since I broke my neck. "I don't even know you." "You know I won't be looking at other women. I can barely turn my neck." Her smile turned to a laugh. "Tell you what, tough guy. When you're in for your physio, call this extension." Marcela lifted a pen and scribbled down 1314 along the margin of my release papers. "If I'm available, we can eat some underwhelming cafeteria food together. There's a courtyard with a small garden near the rehab center." I'd never thought of myself as the marrying type. Not really. But in that moment, with those words and that smile and those eyes, I would have taken the vow there and then. "It's a date," I beamed. "Go on. Get out of here before you get me into trouble." I wheeled myself towards the door. It felt like walking on air. I stopped just as Jimmy swung the door open for me and looked back. She was off on her rounds again. I caught just enough of a glimpse of her walk to make the hard work I knew I had ahead of me worthwhile. When we got back to my boat, Jimmy folded up my wheelchair and carried it in through the narrow front door for me. I used the walls to stabilize my childlike advances until I caught sight of the couch. If I moved forward quickly enough, I'd hit the padded cushions with a good 60 to 70% of my body. From there, I'd be able to drag the rest up into a comfortable, seated position. As I did, Jimmy appeared before me, having lifted the fridge from the kitchen, only to set it beside the couch. "It'll save you having to get up so much," he said. "You want to do the same with the toilet? You know, you got real lucky. I've seen guys do half the damage to themselves you've done, and end up wasting away like root vegetables." He grabbed a beer before planting himself in the armchair next to me. "I thought I was done, Jimmy." Last thing I remember thinking was something that Ray said to me. Well, you're past that moment. Put it in your rear view and focus on getting better, getting back to work, and making some serious money. Frank'll do right by you. He may be an egomaniacal piece of shit, but he knows who built his house for him. I guess. I sighed. What's there to guess about? Just look at me. Frank and I had a dust-up years ago, but that never stopped us earning. Even when I left and did work with some of the regional boys he hates, it never got in the way of me coming back. You're coming back again? By the time I'd moved out of tag team wrestling and into single bouts, Jimmy was already on his third retirement bash. He was taking to the ring again as part of Wyatt's faction. Frank's big push for his daughter's little douche was how one of the locker room mouths would refer to it. Jimmy would team up with Wyatt, Nina, the Canadian tag duo of Larry and Luke Pincer, and the last cowboy Jericho Blaze. Jericho was the definition of a stand-up guy. He sat as judge in wrestling court when matters between men got out of hand and in the ring. He was as straight as they came. The fact that Frank was having him break the character in order to push family interest made me sick to my stomach. You ain't heard it from me, but Larry and Luke are going to have one last push to try and get them over with the crowd. If it doesn't work, Frank wants to split them up and repair them elsewhere, said Jimmy. That sounds about right to me. You seen any of Marty? Not really. Why? Jimmy said between slugs of beer. Nothing. He's probably just keeping kayfabe, from what Nina was saying. Fuck it. Give me one of those beers. You sure? They're mine, I quipped. So hand one over. Jimmy drank and ate me out of house and home. By the time he left, he dragged my fridge into the living quarters for nothing. I slept on the couch that first night, and the second. In the early hours of my third day home, I woke to the gentle sway of the old girl on the water as someone attempted to board stealthily. I reached to the coffee table, grabbed my Colt .45, and drew back the hammer. It made that sound, the one that says, "Make a careful choice for your next action." Her hands went into the air. "Geez, Big Jack. I come in peace," said Nina. She flicked the light on, damn near blinding me. "I was trying not to disturb you. I'm a grown-ass man who wears spandex for a living, Neen. Everything about my natural state is disturbed. You bring anything to eat?" Jimmy keeps bringing me beer and groceries, but they never survive his visit. She set a respectable-sized pizza on the coffee table before squeezing into the couch beside me and pulling the blanket over her legs. Nina reiterated that she stayed for as long and came back as soon as she could. I knew this and told her so, but I still hadn't had so much as a word from Marty. Initially, I thought kayfabe, but now I don't know. I think he blames himself, Nina said. Well, that's fucking retarded. This is the business. You make money until you get hurt. What you don't do is ghost your goddamn friends while they're on the injured roster. I'm a cripple on a couch. I ain't hard to find. I'll speak to him, she said, handing me a slice. Call him an asshole. Oh, I will. He might feel a little less guilty now that he's a former champion. So Frank really did it. All that heat, and he gives him the strap for a week, I said, trying not to enjoy it. Yup. We just recycled what was meant to happen at the end of your match. In fairness, it brought a lot of heat. I was drowned in warm beer. You'd be surprised how good the aim is of drunken, pissed-off rednecks. I remember all too well. So you're valeting for Wyatt now. I'm making some moves of my own. Think I've Frank convinced the women's division, done right, could put bums on seats. Maybe even bring in some of those girls from Vegas. Nina watched me like a hawk as I used the whole of my upper body strength to change my posture on the couch. She looked me over with concern before asking, "How is everything down there?" "Legs are fucked, but I can feel them." "And little Jack?" "You asking for a friend?" She laughed, and it made her snort her beer before going into a coughing fit that I had to smack her across the back to break. When the pizza was done, she moved to the coffee table. She sat facing me and placed each of my feet in her lap before forcing me to do some physio exercises. I'd play for time saying shit like, "It's late and I'm tired. I can do this shit in the morning." "In the morning, you'll have other shit to do, so which will you put off?" she countered. "Fine." I grunted as I tensed my jaw and tried to raise my foot from her lap. "Come on, you can do better than that." "I'm trying." "Well, try harder. Tell you what, you lift that foot and hold it for 10 seconds, and I'll show you my boobs." "I've seen your boobs." "Okay, how about that hot nurse? Lift that paw, and I'll go get her number for you. I heard her tell one of the other ones she thought you were a real hunk." She bargained. "Way ahead of you on that one." "I got a promise of a date." Nina gave me a cheer and 2 big claps of her hands. "Way to go, Big Jack. You're a sly old dog if ever there was one." After 10 reps of each foot, Nina relented. She pulled a few cold beers from the fridge before crashing back into the couch. She pushed a cassette into the VCR, and we watched Ray race in his prime. When he landed that flying headbutt, I would have turned away had I been able to move my neck. We got into this business because it was all we knew. When we knew more, we stayed in it, because it was all we loved and it made us feel like gods. For the first time since I was cast out of the heavens and onto the injury list, I felt connected again. I was stripped bare of my powers, but with Nina snoozing next to me and Ray holding that strap above his mustached head. In the center of the ring, I felt more than mortal again.